Good morning. 3 lessons I learned this week. Let's get into it. First is related to focus and energy. If you read my blog post, this might sound familiar, but that's okay. One afternoon, or let me restart. I've been experimenting with my focus and lunch and trying to figure out what criteria need to be met to have clear focus, and particularly, like, I figured out the morning 4-hour block. That good. Figured that out. It's the afternoon. I'm like, there's all this time in in the afternoon, and it feels weird to like not work if I'm really trying to get after my goals, kind of thing. So this one day this week, I ordered a decent sized lunch, but it was not heavy on carbs. And so that's one thing I've been experimenting with is carbs equals, or my hypothesis is carbs equals post-lunch crash. So any kind of like bread, been trying to stay away from, and that's pretty much it. That's the main thing. And so I had eggs, tempeh, broccoli, or I might have mushrooms, and avocado. And I think I had a smoothie bowl and a juice. And I ate lunch at noon. Took me like 20 minutes, took a quick break, and then like immediately continued to work. And under the assumption that no carbs or low carbs equals no post-lunch dip, I thought I would be able to continue my focus. And I only made it like 45 minutes before I got to that point where I was like just staring at the screen and then like forgetting what I was doing 3 seconds ago, And at that point I called it quits. And I took a nap that afternoon, and in the late afternoon I came back and worked some more on my laptop, like 3 to 4 before my workout at 4:30, and I felt my focus like coming back, and that was really interesting. And so I learned that it wasn't necessarily a post-lunch dip because of what I ate. It was the fact that I'd just done 4 hours of concentrated focus, and I needed a break from my focus. Like I'd run out of brain power, essentially. And so I found that if I take a 1 to 2 hour break during and after lunch, chill, maybe do some reading, that I still haven't figured out, like being able to read well, and then like well as in actually concentrate. But then like that 2:30 to 4:30 block, I actually have found my focus to come back pretty well. And so rather than trying to eat lunch and then push through, I think I've at this point learned it's just not worth it. Take the 1 to 2 hours and then come back, because your focus will come back better than if you tried to just keep pushing through. And it's mostly independent of the food that I eat. So that's number one. Number two is yes. Yes. Hello, doggos. Um, this was after, what is this related to? Dopamine and life. This was after I had this long conversation with this girl, talked about her prioritization and business, and then I brought up my own ideas about mentorship and like long-term plan coaching, and there were a lot of ideas going around in my head, and I was also very tired that day. And so after lunch, I could feel my head just like almost like throbbing with like how tired I was. And I was waiting to go on a walk because I wanted to make one of these videos and kind of process my thoughts. But it was like 2:30 and I was waiting till 4:30. And so I had 2 hours to kill. And so I went to this middle section of the hostel, and there are all these like cushions. And I just sat down there. And then I laid down on my back, and I looked up at the ceiling and watched, there's a open air. I watched the clouds go by. And it reminded me of something that I heard in a video, which was this guy interviewing some high performer, and he does this thing called wall staring, where he literally just looks at a wall as a way for active recovery. Because the theory is, ideally you want your breaks from concentrated work focus to be less stimulating than the work. And so, if you're scrolling Instagram or Facebook or watching YouTube videos or whatever, that is more stimulating than your work. And so it's not actually active recovery. And I don't know why I didn't feel like watching YouTube or scrolling Instagram. But I noticed that I didn't feel that desire. It felt wrong. It felt off. Because there was just so much to process. And I was thinking about my future. And I think it felt weird to have an open loop of things that I'm thinking about that are directly related to my future, and then distracting myself by scrolling Instagram. Or what I would do is watch YouTube videos. I don't really scroll Instagram anymore. But I sat there for a while, an hour and a half, just watching the ceiling. I moved around every once in a while. But I realized, it almost felt enjoyable. And if you've been following my videos, I think 2 days ago I talked about this, or maybe it was yesterday, I don't remember. There's this lizard on the ceiling, and I was watching the lizard interact with this wasp nest inside the gutter, and the wasp would go out and try to attack the lizard, and the lizard would move, and then the lizard would try to get closer to the wasp nest. And I was actually finding enjoyment in watching this interaction. And I realized later, I thought, I've noticed in the past 6 weeks, I've enjoyed the little things a lot more in life, like that, and just watching the clouds go by. And I thought, there's so much of life to enjoy when I'm not drowning myself in dopamine. And that was a really interesting realization. And it showed me that I've made a lot of progress since I've been here. Because it's one thing to be like, yes, wall staring is a great idea. But then it's another thing to actually do it. To actually sit there and like look at the ceiling for an hour. I mean, off and on, but. So, anyway, I feel like the amount I've enjoyed my actual life and looked forward to the things of my actual life has increased so much that like the dopamine I get from Instagram and YouTube, I've just started to like train. I think I've trained my brain that it's just like, it's just not that rewarding anymore. And that's been a really interesting switch. So that's the second thing I've learned. The third thing is fairly quick, and that is about sleep. I listened to this Huberman Lab clip from a podcast between, I don't remember her name, Andrew Huberman and someone else. They were talking about sleep. And I listened to the clip. Basically, they were talking about growth hormones. And that in the first phase, so your body produces growth hormones like at all times of day and at all times of night. But specifically the first phase of deep sleep that you get into when during your sleep produces like a lot of growth hormone, and then like the rest of it like kind of trickles in. And one of the things that Andrew Huberman asked was like, let's say you always go to bed at 10 p.m. And then let's say hypothetically that your first deep sleep is like 10:30 to 11:30 or like whatever. We're just making numbers up. If you happen to miss that, let's say you went out with a friend or you went out one night and you didn't get to bed until 11:45, would your body go, okay, I'm now starting my sleep. I'm now in my first deep sleep cycle at whatever, 12:15. I'm now producing all of that growth hormone. And the answer is actually no. It's because your body is on a clock and it knows when to produce what. And so it knows that from 10:30 to 11:30 is when I'm supposed to produce all of the growth hormone. And if you miss that, you just miss it. And that was really interesting. I was like, wow, incredibly valuable, incredibly actionable. Like, the implication is that your bedtime consistency is almost just as important, if not more important, than like your wake time consistency. And so that's something I've kind of struggled with here. Is I was a lot more consistent when I was like a year ago living in the van. I think because I always drove to the spot I was going to camp like at the same time, and so I had that as my like clock to start. But this is like, I don't know, it's always plus or minus 20, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So anyway, if you miss that first cycle of deep sleep, your body doesn't make it up in the next one. And I'll leave you with that. And I'll leave you with those. Bit of a windy morning. Hopefully the audio came through okay. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.